Welcome, welcome, welcome to Golden Creatives Talk. This is the space where we reclaim our narratives and step into our full golden multidimensionality. I'm your host, CT Luna, or you can call me Cynthia, and I am thrilled to welcome today's guest, Saprina Danise. Saprina is a financial educator, a certified coach, and the visionary founder behind the brand Her Money Story on Substack. As a first gen corporate pioneer, she intimately understands the professional paradox, that gap between a high earning career and the actual lifestyle reality of building wealth from scratch. Saprina transformed her own journey from stretching dollars to architecting six figure wealth, and she now empowers other high earning women to stop feeling broke on a large salary and start building wealth they can actually feel. Today, we're going to talk about how we, as Black, Brown, and Golden creatives, can move from a survival narrative to true financial sovereignty. Saprina, I am so excited to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. So, before we get started, tell us a little bit about you. What makes you you?
Yeah, awesome. So you touched on my story a little bit. I'm a first generation everything. I was the first person in my family to go to college, first person in my family to not work a blue collar job. My mom worked in a factory. My dad was a truck driver. And those were all great things. And then it went
Mhm.
into the workforce. I went into corporate America and I had a huge shock, a huge culture shock, a huge identity shock. There were so many things. I really struggled for the first couple years of my career. And I think a lot of it had to do with just the culture of corporate versus growing up in a black and brown house. There's so
Mhm.
many differences, right? And navigating that space. And at one point I think that my real journey started when I woke up one day and I was making six figures and I had $18,000 in credit card debt. I think at that time I was making about $115,000 a year. Had $18,000 in credit card debt, a really sharky car loan that I was upside down in. I think it was like 27%.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had a toddler at the time, a single mom, and I was like, this just cannot be the life. Like,
Yeah.
you wait for that moment where you think like 100K is that thing that's going to change everything for you. And I was making the money and nothing was different. And so
Right.
funny, I paid off that debt 3 times because I was really good at the mechanics of paying off debt. I didn't figure out like, oh, I've got to change my habits until much, much later. Probably took me another 4 years to figure out that I had to change my habits. And so I did that. I paid off all the debt. I swore I'd never get in debt again. And then I started learning, okay, now that I don't have debt, what do I do with this money? Do I, you know,
Mhm.
I wasn't paying really high credit card bills anymore, but I was buying really expensive handbags and jewelry and things that weren't going to do anything for anybody. And I started reading. I started with Dave Ramsey, went down that road, and then started just like consuming all of the personal finance content that was out on the market. And then I started to realize that the people that were teaching it didn't look like me. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, I don't have parents to lean on. And so, Dave Ramsey and his $1,000 emergency fund, like that's good for somebody who's got a backup plan, but like I don't have a backup plan. So I started exploring other options and then I decided that I was going to create that platform. And so I think the rest is history. Now I teach women on the internet how to not feel broke when you're making really good money anyway.
Yes. There are so many layers to all the things that you shared. So we're just gonna start unpacking. Where am I gonna start? I think the first place is about going from, that mindset or that lifestyle of being part of a blue collar family or, and being that first gen, right? And so I think my question for you is something along the lines of like, why didn't a higher salary kind of automatically equal financial peace for you? That there was some kind of tension or
Yeah.
conflict that was taking place there.
Yeah, I think when you grow up poor, and it's always funny when I say I grew up poor, it even feels weird because I didn't know we were poor. We were poor, but in
Yeah.
comparison to the people, so I got bused to a school that was another district over in like a gifted program. And so
Hmm.
I would go when I was in my community of people who lived, my neighbors and my cousins. I didn't think we were poor because we had what we actually had more than they had. Like we weren't,
Right.
as bad off as some of the people around us. And then about my freshman year of high school, I started going to this really affluent high school where the people around me had, the kids all had cars. I was
Yeah.
taking the bus to school, and the kids all in my school had cars, and their parents were judges and lawyers, and I was like, whoa, like I'd never had that experience. And so I think that your the way you grow up with money really forms the money story that you tell yourself. And
Hmm.
so as I got into corporate and I got the six-figure job, I thought, well, this is it. This is all I need to live that lifestyle. And so
Right.
I did that. I started to live that lifestyle. I, got the fancy apartment and the nice car. And, I wanted the fancy handbag that my coworkers were having. And I didn't know how to manage the money. And so the money was there, but I hadn't learned how to manage it, coupled with the pressures of being the first. So many people
Right.
in my family had sacrificed so that I could go to college. And
Right.
so, then when people are calling and they need stuff, you're not you feel guilt about saying no. And so there was the lifestyle inflation on one side, but also this need to reach back, right? And make sure that the people in my life didn't, there was this guilt about being the one that made it.
Yeah.
And so it was buying, things for the family or spending the money that I really didn't have it to spend. And so, 100K is not a lot of money when you don't know how to manage it.
Yes, especially if you live especially if you live in
Yes.
certain areas, right? I
Yes.
mean, I used to live right now I live in one of the, most expensive countries in the world, and before that when I was living in the United States, I was living in areas like Washington, D.C. and San Jose for a while and
Yeah.
Hawaii, right? Like I just happened to keep like going to very expensive
Yeah.
places. And even though my salary was kind of increasing as I, advanced in my career, it was like I just couldn't keep up
Mhm.
with my lifestyle mentality. I'm
Yes.
going to go back to your first gen thing. I was not a first gen, but my parents definitely were savers. They did not talk about money at all. They felt like it
Mhm.
was uncouth.
Mhm.
And obviously, I'm from a mixed family. So my father was Black, middle class, and my mother is white, middle class. And I also felt like I had a responsibility to them
Mhm.
to sort of pay back and not necessarily pay forward. And so
Yes.
I think I want to kind of talk a little bit about that as well. Like there is this guilt about
Mhm.
having to, um, I don't know, is it like some kind of compensation for I grew up in a loving family where I never, wanted anything. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
of course I wanted like the new gadget
Yeah.
or whatever, and I couldn't have it while my friends did. But still, I I like we never had to worry about whether there was going to be dinner on the table.
Yeah.
And as I grew out of that, and became my own adult, I started realizing like, oh, okay, like we actually paid for the vegetables and the,
Yeah.
meal that ended up on the table because I'm doing that now. And I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of acknowledge and thank them for that environment. But I was kind of like in this doom loop of, like paying all the people around me who were in
Mhm.
need while I was also just trying to like get my footing.
Yeah.
Um, so talk a little bit about that because I feel like there's a lot that's attached to that that isn't necessarily shared in non-Black and brown
Yes.
communities.
That's, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Like it's not that part, that feeling the need to reach back to take care of the family, right? I think that is more of a Black and brown community
Mm,
culture thing than it is a first generational thing. Yes, as the first gen, you also there's this guilt of like, I made it, and my parents did all these things so that I could go to college, and there's a little bit of that. But I think though in the Black and Brown communities, it's very much in our culture that we take care of each other, and there's this. It's funny because my mom and I talk about it now. My mom has gone to a lot of therapy, and so she's a very different person now than she was in my childhood. And when we laugh about it, but she even talks about, as I became a young adult, this feeling, this need that I owed her something.
mm,
And we talk about it now because we see it happening with other family members. But there's this, I think, parental, like, I gave up so much for you, and now that you have, you
mhm.
sort of owe it to me, right?
Right.
Which I have a 20-year-old, and I'm like, never in my mind would I ever feel like he owes me anything except for like when he actually owes me money, but that's a different conversation.
And an important lesson
Yes.
conversation too. Yeah.
Yes. That's something he and I deal with a lot, because I want him to be a man of his word, and do what you say you're going to do. It's never about the money. But I think that is, it's a little bit of an old school mentality, to go back to what we were talking about your children taking care of you once they, reach a certain point in the Black and Brown community, that I hope that we're starting to like get past. But I
Yeah.
think so much of it is rooted in culture and environment and history and so many other sort of things.
Yeah. Actually, just as you were talking about that, I was thinking about my husband, who's Dominican, and he's a New Yorker,
Okay.
and he's one of 13. And he would always joke that, like, oh well, it was just about the insurance policy. So like you had that many children just to make
Yeah.
sure that somebody's going to take care of you. And that, so even that, it's like baked into the
Mhm.
expectation. It's like, I am born in order to make sure that my parents can live comfortably in their old age.
Yeah. I mean, it's that
That
thing
is
though,
my
right? When
purpose.
women talk about being child free, I see so much discourse, especially on TikTok. I'm always in the comments around like, well, who's going to take care of you when you get old? And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
what a terrible reason to have children, to
Yes.
go through all of that,
Yes.
and this sort of banking that they're going to take care of you when you get old.
Yeah.
And I grew up, I went to predominantly white schools. And so I've got a lot of friends that they don't have that. We have these
Right.
conversations. They don't have that sense of responsibility to their
Yeah.
siblings or their extended family in any way, shape, or form. So I do think it's very much sort of baked into the culture.
Yeah, there is some kind of like, almost like sacrificing, or,
Mhm.
like taking the shirt off your own back,
Yes.
as like a love language thing that seems to be part of like the Black and Brown communities,
Yes.
in ways that it's not really about, like, it doesn't compute, I think, in non-Black and Brown
Yeah.
communities the same way it does for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. And I think, that's a big thing that I teach my clients, is that you've got to, what they talk about on an airplane, you have to put on your own mask first. You have to be able to put on your own financial safety mask first. If I can't pay my own rent, how am I going to give you money to pay yours? And then, because who's going to take care of me? I can't rely on
Right.
you because you can't take care of you. So you have to be able to take care of yourself. And I think because it's so deeply in our culture, I had to learn some boundaries, and I had to set up a line item in my budget for, this is my helping family line item, right? And when
Uh-huh.
it's empty, and I can't, because
Right.
you have to be able to put on your own safety mask first.
We are going to talk budget. I have I have budgeted time for the budget conversation. So let's put that on hold for a hot second. I
Yeah.
saw somewhere that you had written, that you used to feel like money was something that happened to you,
Mhm.
and I- and I want to ask you, how did you change that? Like, what was that tipping point that made you stop feeling that way?
Yeah. I think so. There's this saying in coaching, how you do one thing is how you do everything, because you
Oh,
can't deal with everything at one time. You can only deal with one thing at a time, but you will notice that if you avoid your checking account, what else are you avoiding in your life? There are probably other things that you avoid in your life. And so it wasn't even about it wasn't about my budget that made me come to that realization. It was sort of how I approach life that made me realize that, oh, I kind of walk through life like things happen to me. And I have a lot more power over
Uh-huh.
my circumstances, over life. Yes, there's like systematic inequities and all of that. But at the end of the day, we can only control what we can control. And
Right.
so once I started to realize that, like, I kind of had that little bit of an attitude about life, especially like within my career, that then it just kind of transitioned into everything else. And then it was the same thing
Mm-hmm.
with like, well, I also can control what happens to my money, right? Like at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, it's my money and I get to control how it shows up. So I think for me that realization wasn't always about my money, it was about other parts of my life, but how you
Yeah.
do one thing is how you do everything.
I wrote that down because it's the first time I heard it, and that's gold. And actually, that you also mentioned bank account shame, and actually, that's the question that's going to lead to the budgeting thing. So let me ask you about that. Um, Oh, right. So you've talked about this bank account shame where you feel like you look good on paper. I'm making the six figures. I've
Mhm.
arrived. I have the apartment to show for it. I've got the handbags, the car, the garage and the elevator that pulls up straight into my apartment. But then you're like always afraid of like looking in your bank account. You're racking up those restaurant, tabs, and they're just multiplying on your credit card that's at a
Yeah.
27% APR.
Yeah.
Let's just pause and talk about this. How you do one thing is how you do everything, and the avoiding of the bank account reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's this I just wrote about it, I think on my Substack. I think it's going out next week about financial dysregulation, right? And we can have that in so many areas of our life. You have that emotional dysregulation when it comes to relationships, or I used to have it with relationships. At like a recovering people pleaser, I would get so anxious anytime somebody would ask me a question because I didn't want to disappoint them by giving them the negative answer, telling them no
Hmm.
about something. And I think we can get that the same with our finances, right? We know we're spending the money. It happens. I hear this the most with my clients when they're on vacation. They're on
Mm.
vacation. They're spending the money. They know that they've got car payment, rent due when they get home, but they're just ignoring it. It's like that out of sight, out of mind thing. They're not thinking about it, which is which I have a joke with my fiance. I say that money's not real on vacation because I think people seem to like it's not real. And then you come home and now you've got all this anxiety built up because I'm
Mm.
so sorry. I know that that's got to be really loud. I'm going to take this toy from my dog.
Oh, it's okay.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you could hear it. I was like, that is so loud.
It wasn't so
Uh,
bad. No. Mm-mm.
Okay. Awesome. So I think, we come home and we have that same, our nervous systems are dysregulated because you've
Right.
spent 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever time that we were in Europe having a great time, but ignoring the numbers, ignoring the bank account. And then you get this anxiety that comes from, and I think we as people of color,
Hmm.
particularly, we ignore our nervous system. We know we've been told,
We're good at
whatever
it.
things that we've been told. We're so good at it. And I think it's
We are
because we
so good.
constantly are walking around in a state of anxiety that you almost don't notice it, right? Like,
Yes.
I know that you don't live in the States, but like being Black in America, you're anxious all the time.
Yes.
And so you don't notice that there's this other dysregulation that's happening around
Yeah.
your finances until you really start to slow down and tap into your body. And that's something that as Black women, it takes a lot of practice for us to learn to do that.
Yes. 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 I had another guest here who did not talk about finances and financial literacy. She was actually my coach. And she coaches specifically Black and Brown women. And I was lucky enough to be a part of one of these cohorts a couple years back, and she was on the show. And she talks about what she calls a trauma default. And you've
Mm,
mentioned like a few of those trauma default elements that especially Black and Brown women have
yeah.
like perfected in
Yeah.
order to move through traumatic spaces and environments in a completely, functioning way.
Yeah. We don't even realize it.
We don't. And in fact,
Mhm.
it's sort of like even the first few sessions that we had with her, she was kind of like, this is the problem. You are like, you're the crazy one, like you're about to pop off. You're about to pop off. You're like this close, but you
Yeah.
just you don't know it because you're so good at masking it even from yourself.
Yeah.
So, I actually had discovered budgeting before her. And it did help me.
Mhm.
It did help me to realize that the way that I was talking about money with myself was problematic. I'm going to
Mm.
transition now into sort of the budgeting conversation, and I'm going to slow down in this area because for me it was such a game changer.
Mm.
Because I had started to enter into that, like, okay, you know what? I'm in a six-figure space. I do have, like nearly six-figure expenses. Some of them are necessary, mandated.
Yeah.
I have to pay my health insurance, like it's mandatory here.
Yeah.
Taxes, et cetera, whatever. And I was like, and I know that I should be able to do well. Like
Mhm.
I see so many people around me who are also like doing very well. I don't know like I haven't learned how to have these conversations with people, but like I should be able to do this. And there was a moment when I was learning about budgeting that um I realized like, oh, a company only talks about the budget. They never say, I can afford this or I can't afford this. They either say, we've budgeted for that
Or we didn't.
or we haven't budgeted for it. So,
Mhm.
like, this whole shame of like being able to like pay for a night out with your friends was like dissolves instantly. It's like, sorry, guys,
It's not in the
haven't
budget.
budgeted for it. So,
Yeah.
like maybe next time, right? It's a totally different. So for me, it was a huge game changer. Um, but there is a trap, and this is where my question comes to you because I saw a post from you from maybe a couple months back, where you talked about a four-step system,
Mhm.
which was way fewer than like the 90 line items that I had in my budget. It's a lot of time to be spending
Yeah.
on your budget.
Yeah.
It's important to kind of like understand how you're spending money and all of that, but to
Mhm.
do that on a week, to manage 90 line items on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So tell us about your budgeting framework because
Yes.
I'm a dig in.
Yes. I spent probably 3 years tracking every single dollar that I spent. Like I was obsessive about it. And for a while it was fun, and which is I didn't mind doing it. It was like a thing. I'd sit down in the morning before I'd work with my cup of coffee and I'd log into my budget and I'd track all the things. And I always start my clients with tracking their spending because it anything you track will change. So there is
Hmm.
something really magic that happens from tracking your spending. However, that gets burned out very quickly if you are not someone like me who just like gets joy out of it. If it does not bring you joy, or I get a lot of clients who have ADHD. If you have
Hmm.
ADHD, there's no way I'm going to give you the spreadsheet and expect that you're going to sit down and track it every day. And so I developed what I call the Freedom Stack. It is a 4 checking account system that allow you to move your money through it automatically so that you're not spending 20, 30 minutes a week, even tracking every single thing. And so it requires that you sit down one time and really map out your spending. So you'll spend a while tracking so that you know how much you spend. And then you can map out, and you'll have 4 accounts. You have what I call the money in account. This is your central hub. This is where everything flows in and out of that. This is where all of my income comes in. The only thing that account does is collect income that comes in and send money out. There are no transactions that come out of that account other than those 2 things. And then you have your bill pay account. This is the account where all of your bills come out of. This is everything that has a due date. This is anything that if you don't pay it, someone's going to call you up and say, "Where's my money?" Goes into that account. Because people like to, I think our brains like to get really dramatic about, well, what falls in this category and what falls in that category. Like, it's really simple. It's your brain trying to overcomplicate something because it has resistance to doing it to begin with. And so anything with a due date, anything that someone's going to call you up for goes in that account. Then you have your spending account. This I like to call my yes account, because if the money's in this account, the answer is yes. Doesn't matter what is going on there. That's where I do all of my day-to-day spending. That's my groceries, my gas, my eating out, my, hey, I want to buy a Starbucks, a fund. And then you have your wealth building account. That's your long-term savings account. That's your emergency fund, your vacation fund. And you set up automatic deposits to these 3 accounts. So you'll map out your money one time, and then on payday, your money's going to move. It's going to come into your money in account, and then you're going to say, okay, I got to save $500 here for bills, $200 goes here for spending, and $100, whatever your savings goes to savings. And you set up automatic deposits so that the money comes from your employer, and then boom, 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 the bank sends it where it needs to go. And you don't have to sit down and track your spending anymore. If it's Friday and your friends want to go out to drink, you look at your money at your yes account and you say, I've got plenty of money in that account. Yes, we can go. Or that account's looking pretty skimp and I don't get paid again for another week. I probably shouldn't do that. And then once a week, you just sit down and you log in and you look at them. It takes 5 minutes. You just want to make sure money moved where it was supposed to move. Nobody's overdrafted. Nobody's, needs attention. And that's it. It's a 5-minute a week instead of a 20-minute a week process for people who just don't enjoy budgeting. That was a very long-winded explanation.
No, I was sitting here taking notes, and I kind of want to go through each of these accounts. I think I'm going to go through them backwards.
Okay.
Because the wealth building account, the savings, that long-term, I guess 401ks or your equivalents. That's where that money goes. And I remember you saying something about pay yourself first.
Yes.
So paying yourself first. Like I would say when I was starting out, when I was in my 20s, we had somebody come to our offices and they were giving us the spiel. We're your 401k. We've partnered with your, company and la 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 la. And at the time, they were like, whatever you can afford, put it in here. And I was like, I can barely afford 100. Like they kept saying $100. And I was like, $100 is a lot of money. Like,
yeah,
that's how I very much felt at the time. And today, of course, now I'm thinking like, gosh, I wish I put in $100.
It'd be $1 million by now.
Right?
Yeah.
I would be living a completely different life.
Yeah.
So let's dig into this. Like, how do I decide? Because I can already see my amygdala freaking out about this change of having money disappear from my main account, my hub account, and straight into that long-term, wealth building account that I won't be able to touch for another 40 years. Or 30 years, or depending on how much time you have left.
Yes. I had a lot of resistance to pay yourself first also. You'll see if anybody goes back and watches my older videos, I did not adopt that until probably the last 2 years. But what was happening was I was at the beginning of the month paying all my bills, doing all the things, and I was so proud of myself. And then I was like, after I pay everything, because this was a mindset thing, I was operating from a place of scarcity. I was like, after I pay all the things I need to pay, Then I'll set some money aside in savings. The problem was I'd get to the end of the month and there would be never anything left to save, right?
Hmm.
Versus when you prioritize it, all of a sudden there's money there. Like
Hmm.
I didn't start making more money, but I saved my emergency fund probably in about a 2-year time frame, not because I got a raise and started making more money, but because I prioritized the savings. And so I actually recommend highly, if you can, set it up so that it comes directly from your employer into your savings. A lot of times your
Mm.
employers will let you split your direct deposit into multiple accounts. And so if your employer lets you do that, decide how much you're going to save. And saving is a muscle. It's about learning to build that muscle more than it is about the actual savings. I always say
Hmm.
that the first $1,000 you save is the most important $1,000 you'll ever save, because that's where the muscle gets built. So even if it's $50 a week, even if it's $25 a week, I have had clients who started off at $15 because their mind just, that's what they needed to start with. And so you start with a very small amount, you set up so that if you can, that your employer automatically moves that money. And I promise you won't miss it. Most people won't miss it, right? It
Hmm.
might mean that you have to order one less DoorDash. It might mean that I
Right.
can't have the coffee one time. But once the money, once it's gone and it's moved into that account, like there's no tears about it. It's done. There's no negotiating with yourself. And that's the biggest thing I think that happens, right? We get the money, we're sitting there, we've got to now manually do the transfer. And we start having these negotiations with ourselves about it, like
Hmm.
because our brains are resistant to it. So that's where that automation comes in. I can't tell
Right.
you how many people who are like, once I automated it, I forgot about it. Like I completely forgot about it. And then one day I logged into my savings account and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that I was having that money go over there. And then there's something that like you start to feel really proud of yourself, especially if you're somebody who's never saved money, somebody who grew up,
Hmm.
I grew up in a household where like when you get money, you spent it. Like
Right.
savings was not a thing. I even have, my mom has a little emergency savings now, and she's like so proud of herself. And it's like the cutest thing because she was not a person who ever saved. And we had I was laid off a couple of months ago. And so my mom's like, do you need this? I have some money saved? I'm like, Mom, I'm okay. But, she's so proud of herself that she has, money saved now.
Yeah. So, well, that's good point about the getting laid off. And I think that was also my fear, which was especially regarding the retirement accounts.
Yes.
Like having that automated, especially like I said early in my career, having that automated transfer go into my savings account was not a problem, but having it go into my 401k, big problem. Like I was like, I'm afraid I'm gonna get laid off and then I won't be able to touch that money for another, 40 years. Like, no,
Yeah,
I need to have like actual there it's crazy
it
how
is.
like how much, fear is around that possibility and it really keeps you from doing the smart things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, the thing that was really freeing for me was realizing that, like, I can pull it out if I need to. Will it be fun? Will it be cheap? Will it be easy? No. But
No.
could I do it if I needed to? I could.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was the thing that gave me a lot more like, okay about it. The thing that I always have my clients, we do sort of like an order of operations, right? So your emergency fund is first.
Hmm.
That's the money that's sitting in your high yield savings that, if the poop hits the fan, you can pull that out immediately. There's no big deal. There's no friction between you and that money. That's your
Hmm.
first line of defense. Your second line of defense could be, we have options depending on your lifestyle, but it might be doing a Roth account, because a Roth account, there's no penalties for pulling that money out early. You can pull out what you contributed to your Roth at any time and you don't have
Hmm.
any penalties. So you have, I think it's 7,500 this year that you can deposit in a Roth. That money's going to grow. Now, if you want to pull the interest out, that's different. You're going to pay some penalties, but the money you put in. So that's our second line of defense for a lot of people, because
Hmm.
if the poop really hits the fan, like there's two fans, you've got that second line of defense that you can pull out of that isn't going to cost you that much. And then your third line of defense is your 401k. That's the thing that, like, okay, if I'm unemployed for a year and I really need to like get some liquid cash, I can pull that money out. There's going to be fees and penalties and all of that. But that's by the time I've already gone through my two other safety nets. So more than likely, that's hopefully. Not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Okay. Last question about this final wealth building bucket, and then we're just about your emergency savings. What would you do? You advise what that number is, or what like a starter number is for your clients, particularly maybe your younger clients or clients who are maybe stepping away from, the corporate
Yeah.
world, or stepping away from that and maybe entering into something that's more freelance, or a solopreneur sort of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Asking
what
for a
your
friend.
emergency fund what your emergency fund should look like is going to be slightly different depending on your situation. And that's the thing that I really want people to grasp, that your answer and my answer are going to be very different. It's going to depend on your lifestyle, where you live, who depends on you financially, what you do for
Mm,
work, right? I knew that I worked and my former career was in recruiting in tech. Tech is super volatile. There have been layoffs every other week. Recruiting is
yep.
equally as volatile. The soon as the market starts to go down, recruiters are the first to go. And so I
Hmm.
knew that I needed to have a pretty substantial safety net because of those two factors. I also have a son in college. I live in a high cost of living city. So where
Yes.
3 months might be okay for a single person who has no dependents and maybe works I have a friend that's a nurse and she feels really good about 3 months. She's a labor and delivery nurse. She's like, I'm hot all the time. Like there's never going to be a time when she can't get a job. And so
Hmm.
3 months, and she has no children. So 3 months is perfectly fine for her. Nobody's depending on her versus somebody who's got dependents and children and daycare and all of that. So I do have on my website a free emergency fund calculator. It'll walk through all of
Oh,
your expenses, your needs versus your wants, help you sort of decide what your bare bones budget would be. And then that bare bones budget is what you want to make into your, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, depending on your career and your, I think your career makes the biggest difference on whether you need 3 months, 6 months, or a year.
right. Go ahead and tell folks what your website is where they can access such calculator.
Yeah, you can find me on saprinadanise.com.
All right, then that's Denise with an A, right?
It is
So
Denise with an
SAP,
A.
yeah, SAPRINADANISE.com.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip the Yes Money bucket and we're going to go to this bill pay account, because I'm assuming that one of the bills in this bill pay account, I mean, I'm going to skip rent. I'm going to skip the electric bill and the phone bill. Like we know about
No
these, and
brainers.
we're
Yeah.
all pretty comfortable with knowing that we need to pay for these. I'm going to talk about credit cards. What is your strategy for paying off the credit cards? Or rather, what is your strategy for budgeting to pay
Yes.
off the credit cards?
Yes.
Budgeting so
So
that
we
you
should,
can have a yes account.
yes. So we should be budgeting the minimum payment at least for all of your cards, and that minimum payment should be on auto pay. My biggest nemesis in life is billing fees or banking fees. I don't want to pay any banking fees. I don't want to pay credit card fees. I don't want to pay, like,
Late
I that is my
fees.
arch nemesis in life. There was a time in my life when I was paying a whole lot of banking fees all the time, and so you want to set up at least the minimum payment for every single card on auto pay. That way you're never hit with a late fee. It's
Hmm.
very easy to forget. So you want to do that. And then there's a couple different ways that you can approach your credit card payoff. There's what we call the avalanche method, which is where you attack your debt based on the highest interest rate. That's going to save you some money. However, I like the snowball method because you get that psychological win. Snowball method is where you attack your debt based on the smallest balance. So if you got a $600 card, we're going to take care of that one before we take care of the $26,000 card,
Hmm.
because that's going to give you that psychological win. You're going to get that dopamine and that's going to keep you going. So I really like that one. And maybe once you've been in that payoff journey for a while and you feel like you're really good at it, then you can move over to the avalanche. But essentially, when you start paying off debt, you're going to decide how much extra money you have to put towards that debt. So if it's $100, if it's $300, whatever it is, you're going to dedicate that amount every single month on top of your minimum payment. And you're going to put
Hmm.
that towards just the one account. So if
Mm-hmm.
you decide first we're paying off this Capital One with a $600 balance, and I've got an extra $100 a month. That means every single month in that bill pay account, I'm going to put the minimum payment. Maybe it's $25 for the minimum. And then I've already decided I'm going to make an extra $100 payment. So I'm going to earmark that $150 in my bill pay account towards that Capital One. And you're going to do that every single month until that's paid off. And then you're going to take that $150 that you were paying to Capital One, and you're going to roll that over to your next credit card, whatever that is that you're paying, and you'll just repeat that process over and over again until you're paid off. And I did that for 3 years.
I'm interested that you did not mention anything about calling all the credit cards and haggling with them about percentage rates or APR or payment. Like, so to what extent do you advise doing something like that, or really just like going with the set it and forget it mentality?
I think it depends on your situation. I will say, if you are somebody who is emotionally dysregulated when it comes to their finances, me asking you to pick up the phone and call the bank and haggle with them to get an extra percentage down is probably not going to happen.
Not gonna work.
You're going to get all dysregulated. You're going to start freaking out. Like, I think it's a good strategy if you're willing to do it. The problem is most people aren't actually willing to do it.
Right.
I did. So there was a time during my debt payoff journey where I had lost my job. And so I did call all of my credit cards and say I lost my job, and Discover. And I think there was one other card that gave me 0% interest for a year. And
Oh, wow.
that was great. And I actually prioritized paying off those two cards, even though they were lower down on my list. Once I got a job, within probably 2 or 3 months of being unemployed. And I was like, I got a year of zero interest. Let me hurry up and pay this off. So I do think that it is worth doing. But if you're somebody who is feeling really overwhelmed by your finances, that's a big ask. So I think,
Yeah,
I think it works for people who are emotionally regulated around it, but I don't think it's for everyone.
fully agree. And I fully appreciate your response because it does connect with where I wanted us to kind of go back to, which is I think it might even be part of your tagline where you're talking about um, helping helping your clients experience wealth they can feel.
Mhm.
And I'm hearing you talking a lot about, like, I'm not going to advise my clients to do things that are going to make them feel all sorts of ways when really we just want them to like automate it, forget it, and like let
Yeah.
it go away. um so how can you share with us like how we can make sure that our money story is reflecting our values and
Mm.
like the full multidimensional, full potential awesomeness that we know we can be, but somehow it's just not translating in the way I'm relating with money and the way I'm relating with the world with my money.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about that transformation as well? Because I feel like this is a really wonderful, simple budget, which we will kind of summarize one more time. But can you kind of tell people how they can, how, like that process? Because it's so much more than just paying off all your bills.
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
know that, like, once you pay off all the bills, once you pay off all the debt, like, you can still be broke. Like,
Mhm.
you could still be making the same six figures, and you're just kind of in this like spiral.
Yeah. So value-based spending is something I love. Ramit Sethi has this thing. He talks about your rich life, and that's something that I work with my clients to identify what does your rich life look like, and we really
Mm,
paint that picture. What does it look like? If money wasn't something that you were stressed about every day, what would your life look like? In a realistic way, right? Like, obviously I'd
mhm.
like to have a personal chef and like whatever, but that's not realistic for me. But we really hone into like what that looks like for them. And then we start to look at where they're spending their money. And one of the exercises I always have my clients do, which I think it's beneficial for anyone, print your bank statement. So wherever you're spending your money from, bank statement, credit card statement, and then go through and get 3 highlighters. One color for things that I value and I would not ever cut out of my budget. Things that I'm like, I don't really know why I spent that. And then things that
What is that?
things that I don't care about, but that I need to have, right? I don't care about, I don't know, whatever it is, something. I don't care about cars, but I live in a city where I need to have a car, right? So like I have to have a car. And go through
Mhm.
and highlight that. And you will be, most people are very surprised on where they're spending money on things that they do not care about. And then we'll from there design your own manifesto. What are the things that you're like, I am
Mm.
going to spend unapologetically on, and the things that I'm going to completely cut out of my budget because I don't give a shit about them. And that's how you design your rich life. And you start to spend your money more on the things you care about and more on the things and cut out the things that you don't care about. So I have a client who does not care about eating out, but realized that like I was spending so much of my money on eating out
Mhm.
out of obligation to other people, but also out of habit. And so we came up with a really easy, she's like, I could eat the same thing every day. She wasn't preparing. And so she'd stop and get food on the way home and realize she was spending a lot of her money. So we came up with a really simple way that she could meal prep on Mondays, like really simple because she's not someone who wants to cook, and have food available to her. And so that she can stop spending $500 or $600 a month on eating out when it's not something that she values. And so that
Right.
is something that, and it may take some time. You might have to do that exercise 2 or 3 months before you really start to feel like, okay, I value this greatly. I love to travel. I don't care about what I wear. I wear the same clothes all the time. I don't want to spend my money on that, but I want to put
Mhm.
money away to travel. I want to travel well. I want to travel in business class. That's what I value my money in. And that's where I'm going to make sure that I fit that into my budget and I can cut everything else out within reason, obviously.
Mhm. Everything, like I could feel, I have goosebumps, literally, just listening to you because I think now we're heading into the yes money zone,
Yes.
right? Like you've literally described changing the conversation about scarcity and running out of and seeing the minuses in your account into a stepping into an abundant
Mm-hmm.
mindset.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. So let's go back to your budget because the budget is so beautiful. It's so beautifully simple. You've got your
Yeah.
hub account. That's nothing really. It's just kind of a way station. It's a train
Yeah.
station for your money. And the money is going first into your bill pay account, which now we've decided because of this whole highlighting exercise, it's including, the bill, everything you get a bill for. Somebody
Yeah.
might call you if they don't get paid. So we've already set that out. We're paying the minimum across the board. You've ranked your credit cards, but they're all getting paid
Yeah.
with a little extra. So the yes account comes next.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the decisions around the yes account because that's expansive.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard for somebody who's not lived in that space, like communities like ours,
Mm-hmm.
where I guess our yes accounts would have been like, yes, I will pay for little Saprina's, backpack for the first day of school. And yes, I will pay for somebody else. But this is a yes to me.
Yes.
This is a big shift.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is this for your clients?
I think the first month is always really hard. And we get to the end of the first month and they always have money left in that account. And I'm like, why is there money left there? Like, because they're still afraid to spend it.
Uh-huh.
And then you get used to seeing like, oh, this is my money to spend on what I want to spend it on. Now, if you're someone who has a lot of financial obligations to family, we will sometimes set up another account that is for that purpose. And you can
Uh-huh.
say, this is how much money we're going to put here. So it's not even in the same yes account. I like keeping it in the yes account because it creates a boundary, right? I have a 20-year-old son, and I found myself, he was like $20ing me to death. Like, "Mom, can I have $20? Can I have $20?" Like, and it's just $20 doesn't feel like that much money until it's like 7 times in a week, right?
Right.
Um, and I used to keep a separate line item for him in my budget, but that created too much space for me to give him more money. When I put it all in my yes account, then me giving you $20 means I don't have $20 to do my own thing with. And so
Hmm.
that sort of changes, it starts to shift your perspective on it a little bit and start to ask more questions about what do you need the $20 for? Or is it gas or Chipotle? Right. And so, I think it does take a little bit of time to adjust to seeing that money there, knowing that like this money is here for me to spend on the things that I need to spend it on. But there is this thing that happens when you're like, oh, my bill money's already set up over here. Cause that's the thing I think they forget. And so they're like
Right.
really careful about the spending until they remember that, like, oh no, wait, my bill money's over here already. I actually don't even need to think about that. That's already over
Right.
here. And the mental lift, the mental space that it provides for you to start thinking about other things is what I really love. Is that
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm not constantly running this number in the back of my head and doing mental math every time I go to the grocery store, or doing mental math every time I go to pay for a coffee. Um,
Hmm.
and that starts to relax your nervous system. And so it does
Yes.
take a couple months for you to sort of get into that like ease with it.
Hmm.
But once it happens, you can't go back.
You can't. You can't. And what what I loved about budgeting was that all of a sudden I could start to see
Mhm.
that, oh, there is that little extra yes money. I just didn't have a simple bucket. I had like
Yeah.
58 lines for that yes money, whole other topic. But the point is, it's like, oh, now I can go on that cruise. In fact, I think
Mhm.
after the first year of budgeting, I went on my first cruise with my mom.
Got that.
Exactly, and it was like, oh my God, like if you're actually intentional about how you want to spend money. And for me, it was the language that I was using around money, and
Yeah.
realizing like companies don't talk the way people do.
Yeah.
Companies earmark funds for the cruise account, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, I'm gonna earmark funds for this cruise account.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to tell my friends I don't think I can afford it. It's just a matter of, okay, I'm a plan for this. I'm going to be
Yeah.
intentional about like this is important to me and I want to make it happen for myself. So
Mhm.
if I have 12 months or whatever to plan for it, then so be it. I am
Yeah.
I am a
I
fan.
love that.
I'm probably going to be your next client. So,
Ugh.
tell us where people can find you
Yeah.
and reap the benefits of all the wonder of financial liberation.
Yeah. You can find me all around the internet at It's Saprina. So it's Saprina, Saprina on Instagram and TikTok, and on YouTube. I'm not as active on YouTube as I'd like to be, but as well as on Substack. I'm on Substack at Her Money Story. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm really excited because I feel like, one thing that I've been talking to other writers about, especially about money. I just self-published my book
I see. Yeah.
a few months ago, and that wouldn't have been possible if I had been thinking like I used to think about
Mm,
money.
hmm.
Because there are some expenses around
Hmm.
even self-publishing, and it's sort of like $100 here, $500 for that, another $100 here, right? And mind you, something like this is a pet project, right? Like this isn't for me, this isn't sort of I'm not doing this as like a money earner. I'm doing this
Yeah.
because I'm passionate about
Passionate.
writing. But the point is that this goes back to your value-based spending.
Hmm.
You know, I started to have this in my book line item of my Yes account. See, it
I
it
love
would have
that.
been so much simpler to just have a Yes bucket than to have like
Yeah.
50 lines for all the yeses. But yeah, so that's how it happened, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really it's such a freeing thing, right? To
Yeah,
like, even to at the end of the month to be like, I don't know how much I spent in groceries, but it came out of my yes account, so it doesn't really matter. Like the
right.
mind shift of that is, it takes practice, but most things in life do. And so,
Yeah. And I think it also allows you to start thinking about your worth differently.
mm,
And and as you continue on that corporate journey, or any kind of journey, if you decide to go solo and run your own business, you start to ask for money differently
yes,
because you understand, your balance sheet. Like, this
yes,
is what I need, and this is what I expect, and that the yes account still needs to be replenished if you want to
yes,
have a whole, a whole individual serving you through the company or through, a coaching session. So I
yeah,
am worth X $100 an hour.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard. That's a whole different, we could get into a whole nother conversation, right? On Black women and asking for our worth, unpaid labor, and how corporate lines into that. That's a different conversation for a different time. But that is something
It
I'm
is.
actively also learning and understanding. And I think it's so interesting because as Black women, we don't ask for our value, our worth. And it's so deeply ingrained in us to work for free, even though like it's like such in this deep back primal part of our brain somewhere, or as close to free, even though we know that we don't want that, but there's this sort of um dichotomy that happens between like what we've been conditioned to do.
Yeah. It's programming. It's a
Yes.
reprogramming, right?
Yes.
And it's a sort of taking agency over who you are and how you value yourself. And I feel like the things that you're doing are so important because, it's sort of redefining what a financial lifestyle is. There's like this
Mhm.
level of financial lifestyle, which is just kind of like showing the world that you're making the money. And then there's the financial literacy piece that sort of
Yes.
like helps you ascend into like what is the lifestyle that finances are enabling for me to be, all of me, and to show up like in my truest, most evolved way, right?
Yeah.
And that the finances are kind of like upholding me on that pedestal rather than, something that I'm like always trying to like grapple my way up.
Yeah.
It's just
It's a
yeah.
tool. It's seeing money as a tool. It's
Yeah.
understanding the energetic exchange of money. And that's the thing that I think we as people of color have been left out of that part of the conversation. And so it's something that
Yes.
we're learning together as a community. And I think it's such a beautiful thing. I'm on a radical mission to put more money in the hands of Black and brown women. I think it's an overdue mission. It's not a new concept, but it's an overdue concept, because more
Yeah.
money in the hands of Black and brown women enrich the world as a whole. That
Yeah.
it just makes the world a better place.
Yes, it will. I think this is the perfect place to close. Any final words beyond the amazingness that was just that?
I think that's it. I think that's a perfect end to close on.
You're so amazing, Saprina. You can find Saprina at saprinadanise.com or at Her Money Story, I think, on
Yep.
Substack.
Yep. That's it.
Yes.
Awesome.
Ciao for now. See
Thanks.
you next
Bye,
time.
everyone.